Good evening, everyone. The time is now 6 p.m. and I will call this special session of the Kanawha County Board of Education to order with a public hearing on school closure for Midland Trail Elementary. Before we get started with the agenda, I wanted to do some brief introductions. To my far right is Mrs. Debbie Lewis, our Executive Secretary. To her left is Dr. Tom Williams, our Superintendent. To his left is Mrs. Tracy White. To my left is Mrs. Becky Jordan. To her left is Mrs. Kate White. And to her left is Mr. Jim Crawford. I'm Rick Cavender, the President of the Kanawha County Board of Education, and we will go ahead and start our agenda with some remarks of the administration's presentation from Dr. Williams.
Thank you all for being here this evening. School closures and consolidations are among the most difficult recommendations that anyone in my position can make. We know that our schools are fixtures in our communities, and they mean so much to the areas they serve. We do not take these recommendations lightly, and please know that we are here to listen, and I know that we will keep the meeting civil and respectful. As many of you know, Kanawha County Schools' student population is shrinking. In the last 11 years, we have lost approximately 5,000 students. The West Virginia legislature funds school systems based on their number of pupils. Therefore, over the last 11 years, we have lost the funding associated with those 5,000 students. That equates to roughly 460 positions being lost over the last 11 years and approximately $26 million in state funding. The West Virginia legislature is the only group that can change the state funding formula. In addition to the loss of funding, we are also facing increases in required spending in the areas of utilities, waste management, maintenance, and an increase in our mandatory liability insurance. We can no longer afford to operate 60-plus aging facilities. This potential consolidation of 4 elementary schools would give the school system the unique opportunity to build a new school on property that KCS already owns. Kanawha County Schools has applied to the School Building Authority for money to fund construction of a new school, which would include Bell, Malden, Mary Ingalls, and Midland Trail. This new school would be located at the site of the former DuPont Junior High School in the area known as DuPont City. If the board would vote to consolidate the 4 elementary schools, we would find out in mid-December if we will receive the funding. If the funding is received, the earliest a new school could open would be the fall of 28-29. If funding is not received in this cycle or the next, then construction of a new school would not be possible. Anytime there is a school consolidation, there is concern by staff regarding staff retention in the process. When the staffing transfer season occurs, all staff across the county would vote on whether to give priority for hiring of staff at the new school, and if the county votes to do that, would vote to give priority ranking to the staffs of Bell, Malden, Mary Ingalls, and Midland Trail. When it comes time for hiring of staff at the new school, and the county has voted to give the consolidating staff priority, and historically this has always happened, the current staff at these elementary schools would receive priority for all positions at the new school. I hope everyone had an opportunity to look at a rendering as you were entering of what a new school could look like. And I would now want to show a short video of what our most recent elementary school that opened just this fall, Clendenin Elementary, looks like. So. Thank you. As outlined in the meeting notice, since we have more than 15 speakers, folks will have 3 minutes to speak, and one person may have no more than 6 minutes.
Excuse me. Thank you, Dr. Williams. We'll go ahead and begin our portion of the agenda with the folks who have signed up to speak. First on the list is Kristen Williams. Good evening, Ms. Williams.
My name is Kristen Williams. I started subbing for Kanawha County Schools in the spring of 2015 and have been a full-time teacher for Kanawha County Schools since fall of 2016. I spent 5 years at East Bank Middle School, and this is my 4th year at Riverside High School. I've been a parent since the spring of 2020 and a member of the Upper Kanawha Valley community since 1992, the year I was born, meaning all of the consolidations are directly impacting me and my family in multiple ways. My daughter is in the preschool at Midland Trail Elementary, the same elementary school I went to until 5th grade. Then I went to Bell Elementary, then on to DuPont Middle School, and eventually graduated from Riverside High School. In the middle of my high school career, my mother moved to the George Washington district of Kanawha County. She wanted me to transfer because it made sense and was a better school. I argued and fought tooth and nail to stay at Riverside for many reasons, which thankfully I did. Now, enough about me and my past. I am a social studies teacher, so that is important to me. But let's look at the future. I can see the benefits of school consolidation because at some point, who can't? Nice new school with new equipment and new technology that the best stuff the country has to offer. Great. Numbers are down, I get it. But what is being done to keep people here in our communities and in our schools? That is a whole separate discussion we don't have time for tonight. Money is tight, it is for everyone, but we're all trying to make do with what we can for the best for our families and communities. If you aren't feeling the impacts of inflation in the state of the economy, you are doing far better off than the people I know. However, I am concerned as a parent, a community member, and a Kanawha County School employee. Classroom sizes. From the perspective of a teacher, I wholeheartedly believe that smaller is better. I can give my students more direct attention. They can get help with what they need, and their accommodations can be met in a wider range. We can do more hands-on. We can move more because, yes, even in high school, that's important. It's needed. Students are way less likely to be overstimulated and distracted. They're less likely to experience much school-related anxiety, and relationships are more likely to form student to student and teacher to student. I don't have the statistics to show this and back it up, but I do have the first-hand experience. I do also understand that there is legislation that will prevent class sizes from being overcrowded, and there's a code for that. But again, first-hand experience should count for something rather than a document created in the Capitol by people far removed from the school or classrooms in general. Respectfully, I'm not sure when the last time any of the board members were actually in a classroom or teaching for that matter, but as a parent and a teacher, I know that a primary source is a valid piece of evidence. I have a lot of statistics on things, but I'm running out of time. So test scores are important for students that plan to attend college. 504s, IEPs are important for those students that need a little extra help. And for the other students in the middle, I don't want them left behind either. So I have no doubt that the decision's already been made, but you'll do what's right.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next to speak is Angela Pritchard. Okay, Kara Hickenbottom. You'll have 6 minutes. Good evening, Ms. Hickenbottom.
Good evening. My name is Kara Higginbotham. This is my 5th year teaching in the Autism Self-Contained Classroom at Midland Trail Elementary. I am here on behalf of our students who cannot speak for themselves. I have been to each board meeting discussing the closure of all 4 schools, so I already know how these meetings will go and the outcome it will receive. Each of these meetings have had one thing in common: numbers. As discussed before, it has been stated that our Kanawha County Schools numbers are declining. When I first began teaching in the self-contained room at Midland Trail, we had 2 rooms. 10 years ago, when my ISA began working here, they only had 1 room. We now have 3 rooms with 27 students. 27 students that each require one-on-one teaching, 27 students who each have very unique learning styles that each teacher and instructional support aide tailor to daily. 27 students that are kind, loving, and deserving of receiving the best education possible. Of those 27 students, 14 are nonverbal and have very limited vocabulary. Of those 14 students, each teacher and ISA on our team can communicate with them because they take the time to do their very best to do so. whether it be using their AAC device, visuals, choice boards, or communication cards. Each student in our center absolutely loves coming to school. We know they love coming to school because we are in tune with their emotions, their likes and dislikes, their wants and needs, when they are sick or when they are sleepy. Our students feel safe here. They are in a safe place where they are not judged for being who they are, but being praised for who they are. They are incredible boys and girls, and if each of you would take the time to visit these schools you plan on closing, you would be able to see for yourself. If you force us into one larger school, it will become extremely difficult on some days to recognize the small things. With being at a small school, we are privileged to have amazing student-teacher relationships. Outside of our teachers connecting with our students, we have an incredible administrator to support our exceptional students. I'm grateful to have a principal who will console our students on their hard days and praise them on their better days. An administrator who goes above and beyond for not only our exceptional students, but our staff. If you throw us into a larger school, that principal-to-student relationship will fade. As this process of creating a new school, blueprints, what have you, I ask you to remember that our students have specific needs, such as a sensory space, a calming space, which are in addition to their learning space. Our students have a hard enough time walking down one single hallway to transition to the cafeteria, gym, therapies, music, art, and now you are wishing to throw them into a huge, overwhelming building just to save $1. Imagine being one of those 14 nonverbal children and having to navigate through not one single hallway, but numerous hallways and stairwells. How do you plan to incorporate our exceptional students in this new fancy blueprint? Because according to the model out front, you have one room labeled a resource room. That seems to be the size of a bathroom. Also, as touched on in the previous meetings, which are bus times, we've all heard it before, as I would just like to say, it is by no way possible for our students to be on the bus for 30 minutes. After speaking with their parents just last night, out of the 11 students just in my class alone, half of our students begin their day at 5 a.m. and are on the bus by 6:10 at the latest. The earliest bus arrives at our door at 7 a.m. and the next bus arrives at 7:15. That is well over the recommended 30 minutes on a bus ride. Oh, but wait, there is no limit to how long a special needs child can be on a Lyft bus. And a lot of these students have to transfer buses to get to school. Moving our school further away will increase this time even longer, but GPS right, it's super factual. I'm sure that's only 5 extra minutes. Just like our students' disability does not define them, neither should a number that represents a $sign. Please take the time to understand how special and unique our students are. Their education matters because they matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Next to speak is Rachel Knuckles. Good evening, Ms. Knuckles.
My name is Rachel Knuckles, and if anyone knows me at all, I do not like speaking in public. I avoid it at all costs. I was asked to speak tonight because the decision before you will affect me in many different ways. The fact that I'm standing here alone shows how important it is to me. I am the mother of 6 children. 3 of them are autistic. 2 are at Midland Trail and 1 at Bell Elementary. I am here because the proposal to merge the 4 elementaries into one in DuPont City may make sense to you on paper, but it will be devastating to my 2 boys in all of the autistic classrooms at Midland Trail. It will be hard on the community in DuPont City, and it will diminish the quality of the classroom environment for all kids involved. I'm a lifelong resident of DuPont City. When our 9-year-old son was ready for elementary school, we sent him to Bell, where my 2 older children had met, as well as me and my sister. He is mildly autistic, but he is succeeding in classrooms there. Our next son was assigned to an autistic classroom in Midland Trail, which meant separating them. We added twins to the mix. They are now 5 and in kindergarten. One is in an autistic classroom at Midland Trail, while the other one is at Bell. That is 3 autistic sons and a daughter in 2 different schools. I chose to separate them because they are doing well in their classrooms and their environments. Would it be more convenient to me and my husband if they were all under one school? Certainly. Pickups, drop-offs, and next week when the Halloween parties are at the exact same time and we have to figure out which one we go to and which one the other one goes to. But each school has its strengths, And the autistic classrooms are small enough that our sons are able to cope with the environment. They get the attention they need, and they are thriving with their unique abilities. The proposal to put 700 kids in a single school, particularly in the place of Midland Trail, where the autistic classrooms for this end of the county are located, will be overwhelming for these special needs students. Even my oldest, who is mildly autistic, gets uneasy in crowds, and it's hard for me to imagine how they will fare in such a large school. The proposed location doesn't make sense either, and it would be very convenient to where I live. It does sit back in the community with narrow streets. I can't picture how the start and dismissal would go with that many cars. I know you face budget problems, but solving it by diminishing the quality of our classroom environments to those kids who are most sensitive doesn't seem right either. The care and instructions they receive in the classes at Midland Trail and Bell Elementary allow me to know they are safe and flourishing in each school. I know you have a difficult decision to make, but I wanted you to hear what your proposal does to this mother of 3 autistic children.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cheyenne Harless. Did I pronounce that correctly? Good evening, Ms. Harless.
I came up here to speak to try to save my daughter's school. Obviously, that was a failure, just like none of the other schools. Y'all's already, we feel like our voices aren't even heard. I seen that presentation y'all put of the new school, but yet I didn't see no metal detectors. What are we doing for the future safety of our children? That's why a lot of parents are taking the kids out of schools, because we don't feel safe. A lot of parents are homeschooling the kids, not only because of bullying and other reasons, but that will increase with the population. When you get several more children together, there's going to be a lot more conflict, anxiety. I don't see anything good coming of that. There's got to be other ways we can make cuts. We're new to this area. My children attended Midland last year and this year. My son, he's on the verge of getting tested. It's been very difficult having to pick up and move from our hometown. We're planting roots here, and he is doing so much better, and he is trying. Mr. Davis and everybody at that school has done wonderful with welcoming us both and trying to figure out and trying to help him. They, like the other people spoke before me, there's a lot of children that have special requirements. And these children get overwhelmed with just 20 kids in a classroom. Stuff happens. Kids get hurt out on the playground because there's not enough. The teachers are understaffed. And stuff happens out there because there's not. When you put 60 or more children in a classroom, I only have 4 kids, and I couldn't imagine. I can't keep, that's way too many kids to keep an eye on and have a one-on-one and give them the stuff they need. I feel like we're just going to continue to neglect the future children. It's going to cause future problems. It might save some money now, but how's the future going to look? There was no academic testing. I mean, this is all new, trying to merge all these schools. The kids in Charleston, when y'all combine the schools, they're struggling. It ain't done no better academically. Their depression's getting worse, their anxiety. I know several parents that's pulling their children out of school for children being bullied or not having their needs met. And smaller groups like Midland Trail, they're able to focus on the children, give them one-on-one, like Grandview. That's another school y'all shut down. My children also attended that school, and it was wonderful. They actually taught my children to garden, and they were hands-on. My children learned way more at that school, and then we did the virtual, and that was awful.
Thank you, Mrs. Harris. Next to speak is Jesse Westfall.
Sorry, I'm a little short. You want our kids to be safe, but yet there is a waiver to sign for them to be on the bus longer. And that does not speak of safety. That speaks that if something were to happen, you guys would be safe, but our kids would not. Would you put your kids on a bus if you have to sign a waiver? Probably not. You not only want to take our schools, but you want to build a new school where our children play soccer. So not only are you stripping them of their education where they are used to going to school, you want to strip them of something that is important to them like youth sports. With the increase in students in a room, more kids are going to fall through the cracks. My son, who has ADHD, went from not being able to read at the beginning of last year to memorizing 139 sight words. If it was not for his teacher, Mrs. Randolph, my son wouldn't be where he is today. And that's because she was able to take the time that he needed. Sorry. But with the consolidation and the increase in students, no teacher will be able to take the time that each kid needs. And how can you so proudly risk our children's education? What's going to happen to the children that have to go to third base because their parents are unable to get them off of the bus because we have to work? Why is it always our end of the valley that has to lose? Let us have a win for a change and allow our children to stay where they are used to going to school at. My children, my oldest is now at East Bank, in which you guys have voted to close at the end of this year. My youngest goes to Midland Trail, and even though he still struggles, he is thriving compared to where he was when he first started coming to school here. And it is extremely unfair to not only take from him, but all these other children that have autism or other special needs that Midland Trail. I don't know a single teacher in this school building that doesn't know each children, regardless of grade level, by name. They tell them good morning every morning. Mr. Davis even had a high five with my oldest that he could not wait to do every single morning. And to know that these children are going to suffer because you want to put them in bigger classrooms with bigger kids, and that is unfair. It is unfair to the kids like my son who struggles to read and who hates it because he tells me every evening, Mommy, I wish that I could read like other kids. And that is unfair, that you guys want to do this to every children. What about the kids that need the special attention? Like not only my son, but others who I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westphal. Next to speak is Chelsea Bishop. Good evening, Ms. Bishop.
Okay, I really don't do well with public speaking, but I felt like I needed to do this tonight. Hello, my name is Chelsea Bishop. This is my 4th year working for Kanawha County Schools, but I am also the parent of 2 special needs children that go to school in Kanawha County. I spent 2 years at Marmot Elementary School, and I see the heartache and devastation that the consolidation caused the children, staff, and community. This consolidation not only affects my position, but it affects my autistic child who is spending his first year in an autism classroom at Midland Trail Elementary. I would like to add that both of my children started school at Midland Trail Elementary at 3 years old in the preschool classroom. My oldest child had to switch to Chesapeake Elementary School when it was time for kindergarten so that he could be in the intellectual disability classroom there. My son Carter is in the autism classroom at Midland Trail Elementary School. He has been at Midland Trail since he was 3 years old. He was a baby when he started school here to help aid in his development. Carter is nonverbal, autistic, ADHD, and has anxiety. The staff at Midland Trail have all rallied around Carter on both his good days and his hard days. He requires people around him to really pay attention to details and the little things. He requires constant supervision and has the hardest time in new environments or being out of routine. He has a difficult time socially and often tries to hide from the other children. My question to you is, what does this mean for children like mine? What does this mean for Carter, who only knows this school and staff? I would like to address the matter that we also reside in Hansford, West Virginia. My children wake up at 5:30 a.m. and are on the bus for school at 5:56 a.m. My children often do not get off the bus until after 3:30 p.m. They are both on the same bus who travels to multiple different schools.
They are on the bus for over an hour and a half. What will this mean when Carter is at a new school that is even farther away? Another matter that I'm concerned about is recess. With 4 schools into one, at Midland Trail we have 3 autism classrooms. Our playground seems to get very congested at times, which can be very overwhelming for our unique children. Imagine how they will feel on a playground that is packed full of children from 4 different schools. How will children like my Carter be accommodated? In the blueprint for this new school that we will be all consolidated into, why is there only 1 resource room? We have 3 autism classrooms and Mary Engel has 1 autism classroom. Do you plan on putting 4 autism classrooms into 1? Where is the room or plan for our special education classrooms? Midland Trail is an amazing school that has done an amazing job to teach their students. Our test scores are phenomenal. Most importantly, we have a secretary that goes above and beyond for our students. She works around the clock to make our students have a positive elementary school experience. We have the best administrator that literally gets down and works with some of the most difficult students. My child has many difficult behaviors and challenges that both Miss Amanda and Mr. Davis has gone above and beyond to accommodate. I know personally and professionally that they do this for not only my child, but every child. We will not have staff like them at this big fancy school. Most importantly, even the best staff members will not have the time or resources to even notice every child in the way that they need in a school that is packed full of children.
Ms. Bishop, I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you so much. Next to speak is Eric Carruthers.
I yield my time to Minnie Carruthers.
Minnie Carruthers, you'll have 6 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Mindy Carruthers, and I have been a teacher in Kanawha County Schools for 22 years, 16 of those in kindergarten at Midland Trail. I want to apologize first if I get lost in my notes or flustered. I hate public speaking, which may sound strange coming from a teacher, but you all are not 5 and this is not my classroom. I'm a lifelong resident of DuPont City in eastern Kanawha County. My family legacy includes attending Bell Elementary, DuPont Junior High, and DuPont High School. I walked the same halls that both my grandmothers, my parents, my aunts and uncles, and many cousins walked, and my younger brother was part of the last class to graduate from DuPont High School. My legacy also includes Midland Trail, because my mother was a teacher there from the time I was born until she retired in 2013. The classroom that I currently teach in is the same classroom I played in as a little kid when I would go to work with my mom and dream about becoming a teacher when I grew up. But I ask you now, what legacy are we leaving the children affected by the closing of not only Midland Trail, but Mary Ingalls, Malden, Bell, East Bank, and even Cedar Grove? You may not have noticed me sitting here in the past couple of weeks, but I have been at every meeting that has been held here at Riverside. I have listened to countless number of parents, staff, community members, mayors, and even a pastor speak out against these closures and voice their concerns about the effects they will have on our struggling communities. I have listened to Dr. Williams give the same speech 5 times about how hard closures are, how older buildings are hard to maintain, how the number of students has dropped, and $26 million in funding has been lost in the last 11 years. I have listened as board members have asked questions and tried to justify their votes based on the legislature's school aid formula, being stewards of taxpayer money, how we are the biggest and most diverse county, and how we must have a balanced budget. And I have watched as the community that I love has had fewer people come out to each meeting and fewer people speaking as they lost hope that they were being listened to. I know you all are physically here in this building, and I know you are listening, but are you really hearing what the people of this area have to say? And if you are, my question is why? Why us? Why is it that the eastern end of the county has had a significantly bigger target than any other area in the county? It was surprisingly difficult to research schools that have closed in Kanawha County in the last 11 years, so I can't promise that I have them all. But this is what I was able to find. In 2011, Glenwood and Chandler were both closed, both capital area schools. In 2015, it was Robbins and Once, again, capital area schools. In 2022, you closed Cedar Grove Middle, a Riverside area school. And then last year, Marmette, Grandview, and Weimer. If you are keeping track so far, that is 5 capital area schools, 2 Riverside, and 1 St. Albans. Which brings us to this year's. As it stands currently, you have voted to close 2 middle schools, and after tonight, 4 elementary schools for a total of 6 schools, 5 of which are all in the same area. That means that in 11 years, St. Albans has lost 2, Capital 5, and Riverside, we have lost 7. Think about that. 7 schools. And I can't even say in 11 years because it has really only been 3. If you are a math person, that means that out of the 14 schools closed, 50% of them have been from the eastern end of Kanawha County. If the loss of 5,000 students is attributed to the population in the entire county, why is this area the one with the biggest penalty? Because that's what this feels like, a punishment. I know as members of the board that you are only able to discuss and vote on what is presented to you. So I guess my question should honestly be addressed to Dr. Williams. But again, I will ask why. Why are the cuts being made in the budget directly aimed at closing schools? Why have you not worked from the top down to see where there is wasteful spending occurring? And I do not mean job cuts at Elizabeth Street. Why have you not reached out to these communities to brainstorm ideas on how to save money without sacrificing schools and children? Why have these buildings that are supposedly in disrepair not been maintained? Why are you choosing to overcrowd a middle school instead of building a new school on the old DuPont Junior High, but make it a middle school? Why are you choosing to combine such a large number of elementary schools into a school so big that the sense of community will be lost? And not only that, but what is going to happen to those extra counselors that you were able to put in these bigger elementary schools thanks to the last levy, when the next levy is probably not going to pass because there's going to be a lot of votes for levies lost on this end of the valley. Now let me tell you a little of what I have done in the last 11 years. I have taught and loved my school babies through a water crisis, 2 teacher strikes, a global health pandemic, and other traumas. I know I am not alone in that, and that every teacher out there has taught and loved their school babies through the same things. And I want you to know that we will continue to teach and love our school babies no matter what the future may hold. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but the mascot of Midland Trail is the diamond. It wasn't always the diamond. In fact, they used to be the Midland Trail Blazers. But around the time Riverside opened its doors, the school family voted to change it, and now we are the Diamonds. The jewel of Kanawha County Schools, according to the late Pete Thaw. And I want you to remember that diamonds are forever. I know that your minds were made up long before you walked through those doors tonight, and that nothing I have said will change the outcome of this vote. But despite that, and despite my fear of speaking in front of a crowd, my students need to know that they matter, and that we as a family are willing to stand up and say that they deserve better.
Next to speak is Angie Reed. You, Ms. Reed.
Please excuse me, I'm a bit nervous. I do my best singing and dancing in front of children, not adults. So. I am Angie Reed, the 5th grade teacher at Midland Trail. I understand that everyone at the board office was quite upset after the 2023-2024 summative test scores were released. This is the first time Kanawha County Schools scored below the state. During this time, the staff at Midland Trail, we were celebrating. Our school had the 2nd highest math scores in Kanawha County. The only school that outperformed us was Holtz Elementary School. In reading, we are the 4th highest school. The list is Holtz, Overbrook, Kenna, and Midland Trail. The other schools are in the South Hills area, as you know. Overall, Midland Trail placed 3rd out of 41 schools in Kanawha County. I'm sure nobody at the board office expected our school to do so well. These scores did not happen by accident. They are because every member of our staff is dedicated to our students. We all work together to ensure our students' success. At Midland Trail, we tutor our students not because we have to, but because we want to. We have been tutoring our students after school for years because we believe in our kids and our community. I know the bean counters have determined that building a new school will save money. Is this going to be the best decision for our students? Is this going to raise the test scores across the county? I don't believe it will. I think it will have the opposite effect. Throwing 70 kids together in a pod is not the answer. Our students are thriving because they've grown personal relationship with every adult at Midland Trail. There were other reasons given to close Midland Trail, such as our playground is not fenced, but it is, and that there's something wrong with our entrance. I just have to tell you, our school is not broken. Our kids are flourishing, and we love our students, and we really want to keep our school open for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next to speak is Robin Creed Long. Oh, okay. Kelly Matthews, okay, great. Your name is Matthews.
Hello, I'm Robin Cree Long, and I have been teaching in Kanawha County
Mrs.
Schools.
Long, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I called you Mrs. Matthews, you're Mrs. Long, my apologies. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Robin Cree Long. I'm from the Elk River area, and I have taught in the DuPont area twice in my career for 37 years plus. I've taught from grade school, preschool, all the way to high school, elementary, and special education. I'm telling you, small schools are the best. And when you look into textbooks, you go look at documentation, you look at the research, small schools work. Look at our test scores. We just said we placed third throughout the whole county. I've worked at the large schools. When you're a 4th and 5th grade teacher, you do not know the grade school, the primary kids. At Midland Trail, at the small schools, you do know the primary kids. You recognize them and they recognize you. You look at the small schools, test scores. We are in the top 10 schools. Quarter of the schools were all small schools. Your large schools, their numbers were from 364 to almost 500, and they were in the bottom 4th of all the schools at Kanawha County Schools. And you're going to make us have 700 in this end of the county? You're going to make us have pods where you're going to have 70 kids? And it's going to be open classroom? I'm a special ed person by heart. ADHD specialized. You cannot keep their attention with that much distraction. Glass. Go back to Piedmont. They're a pod school. What did they do? They put the walls back up because it didn't work. And you're making the brand new school technology open classroom. It does not work. Please do not do this. Our goals are mandated on test scores. We're distinguished. We're there. What about the schools in the large schools? Elk Center, my kids came through Elk Center. They did not get the 1-to-1 ratio that we have at Midland Trail. Small schools work. We have a 76th percentile of poverty at Midland Trail. Do the math. We're at the top. That's because our kids, we work with our kids. I agree, we need to cut costs. And I'm sorry, we need to start at Elizabeth Street. There's a lot of misappropriated funds at Elizabeth Street. Look at our reading program. They bought a brand new reading program. What did it do? Jan Richards. It was a good program. Over $1 million spent on this reading program. The new reading books that was adopted had the small group classroom for it. Double dipped. Too much that was inappropriated funds. Also, we have teacher ratios. We're 1 to 23. What are we looking at the new school? Large schools, kids do get lost. Large schools, you're not going to know the kids. Mr. Davis knows every one of those kids. When I taught at Elk Elementary Center, and it was one of the it was at the time the largest school there, They did not know every child. It was hard to keep track of every child. We had all the special needs. It was a cluster school for the BD and the MI. It was crazy because you never knew, because they could take off running and they would take off and you could just have to cut everything. You didn't know where they were because there were so many exits. Our school, I had a kid run today. I followed him out. My co-teacher watched my kids. They had him within a second. They had him. In these large schools, when I had kids take off running at Elk Center, you couldn't catch them. And you never knew where they, in CPI, do the radio, they're out, they're in the hallways, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of crooks and nannies these kids can get lost in. And to me, that's a lawsuit. If you do, I'm looking at cutting jobs there. I see all of these mentor teachers, all of these job coaches. We have unqualified people in the classroom. Let's take some of the people and put them back in the classroom and get those test scores back up. Let's get uncertified people out of the classroom, take some of these people that's in Elizabeth Street, put them back into the classroom, and let's do that instead of misappropriating funds. Let's keep the small schools going, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Next to speak is Tina Randolph.
I yield my time to Haley Green.
Okay, great. Haley Green. Getting the screen.
First, I would like to say that I do not speak well in front of people. Hello, I am Haley Green. I attended Midland Trail Elementary when I was in 4th grade about 20 years ago. Proud mother of Annalise, who is 6 years old and attends Midland Trail Elementary as a 1st grader. I've had the privilege of meeting every person she has interacted with since starting in pre-K. I want to start with how caring and detailed the Midland Trail Elementary staff is. There is no hesitation in contacting me if there is a concern with Annalise. I would love to know if these schools are consolidated, how will you pick the right staff? How do you pick who can continue their career in something that these people are so passionate about? I'm about to get into something very personal that happened last year. Well, not this one, but the next one. I've always said I trust my daughter in her school when I'm not able to be there for an emergency. Looking back to April of this year, I was at work while the tornadoes hit our region, and she was at school. I'm glad she was at school and was home with her teachers and classmates to us, rather than us being alone and us being scared. She said, "Mommy, I wasn't scared. My teachers took really good care of us." May 15th, 2024, me and Annalise was about to go out our back door to go to school, because usually I drop her off, but sometimes, she does ride the bus in the morning. That day specifically, she had really important testing to do, and we got a notification. We have Alexas throughout the house and cameras, and it alerted us someone was at the front door. Out of all the days, my stepdad actually had to go to work early, and usually he leaves after us. And it was just me, my mom, and Annalise. So my brother was at work. Wasn't him. It wasn't my dad. So it was actually a call. He was delivering us some bad news. My brother had passed away while he was at work. And that was right at 7 a.m. when we were leaving. And as soon as I could, after calling the appropriate people that I had to contact with to get my stepdad home and everything, I called her school as soon as I could and let them know that I would send Annalise that day to keep her busy. But I could not fail her. I could not set her up for failure and her fail the test. Miss Carruthers came up to me on awards day and said that they knew Annalise could do better. And she tested 2 more times, and her scores were still low because of what we were going through as a family. But my
point is, sorry, I didn't even read from that, I was just speaking. With the new school, will the new school have time to care, or will my child and everyone else's child be just another number or statistic? Will she have any teachers who will have time to sit down and work with her and not just turn the page and do it? I'm in no way bashing any of the new proposed school staff or their abilities to care or teach the kids. In the new school, if the new school is completed and opened with all 4 schools closed, the year of 28 to 29, my daughter will be finishing her last year in grade school in the new school as a 5th grader, if plans go as they are planned already. The new school will be a messy show, and that's saying it nicely, with getting all staff prepared for the kids. My daughter's 5th year will most likely not be the most educational it could be. My daughter does well in school, and I couldn't be more proud of her, but the moment she starts 5th grade and her grades slip, there will be issues because she does well in school. Continuing on to kids who silently need help, more kids mean more bullying, more kids mean less personal interaction. More kids mean the kids who need help might possibly not get the silent help they need. Kids who are living with neglectful conditions will not bring it up upon themselves to someone else. We need to have the appropriate staffing to ensure these kids are on the right track and getting the help they need if needed. I did read the proposed plan for Midland Trail Elementary during my lunch today, and I also read this, so if it don't make sense, that's why. How will the enrollment numbers go up in the new school where 4 schools are combined versus this 4 schools separate leading to a decrease? To me, that don't make sense. Even if Kanawha County Schools continue with the plan to close the schools, I hope they consider at least 2 of the 4 schools to stay open so our kids can get the education they need and deserve. Bigger schools aren't better. We live in a valley in West Virginia. We do not live in a big city. Moving to school will be harder on some guardians who don't have the means of transportation, and KRT does run, I know that, but not everyone is available to do so. Many people in our valley live paycheck to paycheck or month to month on benefits. My daughter deserves better than a new school. Annalise is more than a number or a statistic.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Next speaker is David Sheldon. Okay. I appreciate that. Next to speak is Reverend Bill Sigler. Reverend Mr. Sheldon said he would give his time to whoever needed. Do you need more than 3 minutes? Okay.
Thank you for offering that time. As what has been stated already, I've been in front of you guys now, this makes the 5th time. And it doesn't get any easier, and it's not going to be any easier. I had an entire statement planned out, ready to go for this evening. And I was even going to start with a joke. But this isn't the time of the joke, hearing some of the stories that have been told. I would like to say to everybody who is here this evening, thank you for sharing your story. That means a lot. And I know it's difficult for some people to get up in front of people and speak to this nature. It is. I used to suffer from social anxiety, and it took me a while to combat that, and now I'm a priest. So I understand what it's like to get in front of people and talk, especially about something that is as important as the schools that we send our children to. I know that the decision is pretty much already made, and I know that a balanced budget is absolutely important. I stated this last night. It's like a church that can't keep the lights on. A decision is going to have to be made, and cuts are going to have to be made. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means that hard decisions are absolutely going to have to be made. I do not envy anybody on the board. I don't. It will be a difficult decision for me to stand up and have to do the exact same thing. It's difficult for all of us in this end of the valley. I will continue to advocate for this end of the valley, my home. I have been a lifelong resident of the Eastern and Upper Kanawha Valley since 1984. My dad served this upper valley as a Kanawha County paramedic for over 40 years. This valley is my home. This valley will be my home probably until I take my last breath. This valley is important to me, just as these schools are important to everybody who is here this evening, who is speaking up. It's difficult to discuss, but one of the things that we do have to remember that whatever the decision here is tonight, that we as a community need to stand up for our kids. We need to make sure that the legislator does know that the funding has to be addressed. I'm not a politics person. I've never been a politics person. I despise talking politics. And in my church, I've kind of made it a rule not to bring politics into my pulpit. But there's times that I have to remember that Jesus himself was political. And this is one of those times when it's time to be political. I have already reached out to both representatives saying that this needs to be addressed and adjusted. And I encourage everybody here to do the same thing. But the more important thing to remember is that as of right now, our kids are going to be looking to us, all of us, whether we are parents or not, what do we do next? And they are going to look up to all of us to know how to go forward with this. And the last thing that we want them to do is possibly go into a new school, angry, upset, and just no clue on what to think. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Reverend. Next to speak is Faith Cox. You, Ms. Cox.
Bear with me, I'm going to try to get this out. I'm here tonight to speak in my father's memory. My father passed away in June, and in his last days, we had many conversations as to how the Upper Kanawha Valley keeps being diminished. He was born and raised at the head of Cabin Creek and graduated from East Bank. He retired as a school bus driver and saw the needs of many kids. He was involved with my brothers in Little League baseball and helped provide transportation to kids so they could participate. He knew what community meant and serving the community. When he passed away, he actually was a resident of the same street that one of you lives on, but kept in contact with many friends from the Upper Kanawha Valley. I can assure you that if he were alive today, he'd be right here fighting along with us. The schools mean so much to these communities, and taking them away is not the best option. In smaller settings, the teachers can more quickly recognize and address the needs of the children. These closings and consolidations affect my family too. My husband and I have 6 grandchildren, 1 with disabilities, 3 nieces, and 1 nephew that will be affected. Schools including East Bank, Midland Trail, Mary Ingalls, and Bell. This is way too much for Eastern Kanawha County to have to absorb. These actions will make it harder for families who have their plan in place in case a need arises for their child. We will not stop fighting for our kids and don't want things to be made harder for these families and our family. Midland Trail is a nice community school, and I've enjoyed visiting there for school functions. One of my grandsons, who's here tonight, Colson, is in kindergarten and was so excited when Riverside football players greeted them at the door one morning. It's the little things like that that matter. U.S. News and World Report has Midland Trail rated number 102 out of over 300 elementary schools. That speaks volumes. One reason why they have a smaller school setting. I just happened to come up on that article today. Why would we want to change that? There must be a better way. Thank you.
Next to speak is Maeve Cox.
I'll give my time to Bruce Cox.
Okay. Bruce Cox. Give me Mr. Cox.
Thank you for this referred to here in a second. I'll make sure they don't fall down. Okay, once again, I've decided to come together with the other fine speakers solely to point out the absurdity of the proposal put together by the KCS administration to shutter Midland Trail Elementary and the other three elementary schools, as well as East Bank Middle School. For the third go-around, discussing bus travel times, of which I've become somewhat of an expert, I've decided to add a little twist by sharing and commenting on several actual quotes from Superintendent Williams in previous meetings. How ironic that this week is National School Bus Safety Week. During my first presentation at the East Bank closing, I referenced actual Kanawha County School computer printouts, highlighting two routes that are currently over an hour and 20 minutes, which the KCS proposal of closing had listed at a mere 15 minutes. When asked about the discrepancy, Dr. Williams stated, and I quote, "Mr. Redmond, our transportation director, used GPS. That's what our drivers have told Mr. Redmond, and that's the information we go by." End of quote. Let's quickly look at one route at which Dr. Williams has indicated was GPSed. The Cabin Creek route starts at 1928 Dakota Road. That's just up the creek from Eskdale. And of course travels to East Bank Middle School, which GPS shows at 19 miles. Again, the proposal says that takes 15 minutes. So 19 miles in 15 minutes on Cabin Creek Road. Folks, that bus would have to travel 76 miles an hour to make it to East Bank in 15 minutes. And that's with 0 stops. 0. But wait, all is good. We can just get away with for those long bus rides. Now let's look at subsequent comments made by Dr. Williams at subsequent hearings when asked about transportation. At the Bell Elementary hearing, Dr. Williams stated, and I quote, "Our drivers drove the routes yesterday and the times are consistent with what drivers have told us." End of quote. Notice, he did not say that the times that they drove were consistent with the times in the proposal, but rather consistent with what they had already told them. Seems strange to me. Now it gets even better during the Q&A at Mary Ingalls, when Dr. Williams stated, and I quote, "Actually, Dr. Carter rode the routes today, and they made all the stops. We are looking at software that will reroute all of Kanawha County. Our current software is outdated and doesn't do what we need it to do. So based on speaking with Dr. Carter this afternoon, there are several things, turnaround, etc., that could be changed to cut time off." End of quote. This one is truly hysterical to me, as he never mentioned what Dr. Potter actually discovered on the rides. Then he went on to seemingly to blame the software. As for the software, let me provide another quick example. The Mayhem route to East Bank. Both the KCS current software and the bus driver's actual breakdown are virtually identical, a current 1 hour and 15 minutes, with the KCS proposal at a mere 15 minutes. With the extra 17 minutes of DuPont, that's a 1 hour and 32-minute ride. Little sidebar here. Could someone please tell me how this new software will reroute Campbell's Creek, or reroute Witcher Hollow, or reroute Cabin Creek, or Little Creek, or Paint Creek to save time? How are we going to reroute those hollows to save time? Dr. Williams only got slightly better at last night's Malden meeting when referring to Dr. Potter, and I quote, "She's been on the bus and has driven the routes of Malden and Midland Trail. They're well within where we're supposed to be." End of quote. Again, he never says the times match up with the gross misrepresentation of the various proposals, merely that they just match up with what we can only assume are the West Virginia requirements of 30 minutes. However, I contend that several of the routes of the 4 closing elementary schools will be over 30 minutes. Second sidebar here, don't you have to wonder why a deputy superintendent would need to ride this bus, or that a transportation director would have to waste his valuable time GPSing when a couple clicks of the computer they both could have got accurate bus times from which to make the proposal as accurate as possible? Or perhaps, as many of us assume, they didn't really want it to be accurate. Now let's look very specifically at one route included in today's proposal, the Witcher Creek route. This route currently begins at 5013 Witcher Creek Road at 6:48 a.m. I didn't GPS it, I just looked at the computer printout. All right, it arrives at Midland Trail at 7:15. That's 27 minutes. Yet the KCS proposal states that this route is a mere 13 minutes. Add the additional 7 minutes to the new location and you will have 34 minutes, not the 20 minutes referenced in the proposal. To me, all of the above, knowing that you have computerized access to the actual bus schedules, is a gross misrepresentation of the actual facts. With my limited time, I'll just assume that several other routes of the 4 schools and this proposal are proportionally deceptive as well, especially Mary Ingles. Perhaps we can ask Dr. Budd. If the KCS admin put so much effort into the above, how can we trust anything in these proposals? Things like using Bell's enrollment data from 2022 and then using Midland Trail's enrollment data from 2023. Did one not say exactly what you wanted, so you had to use another year? And so then I go on. Midland Trail's proposal, we're wondering why it includes school building authority info for Marmot and Chesapeake Elementary instead of Midland Trail. Or how can Midland Trail have 2 different numbers related to building utilization? It's the same proposal. One 32.9%, the other at 55.4%. Right? Folks, as educators, we strive to provide leadership to our kids, and we talk about honor and integrity, and then we have to face a school board that doesn't do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our speaker list. And just as we've done for the rest of these meetings, next on the agenda under new business, in order for us as a board to ask Dr. Williams questions, and for us to discuss, we must have a motion in order to do that. So I will ask our President Pro Tem, Mrs. Kate Wright, to please make the motion.
I move the board close Midland Trail Elementary School upon receiving funding from the School Building Authority and the completion of the new elementary school in the eastern end of Kanawha County.
It's been moved and seconded. We will begin discussion. We'll start with you, Mrs. White.
Thank you, Mr. Cavender. First, I want to say most of you, the first thing you said was, forgive me, I'm not a public speaker. I will say that every single one of you that got up and spoke from the heart, and whenever you're speaking from the heart, it works. So I applaud you for being here tonight and letting your voices be heard. Thank you for all for coming. I do have, first I want to kind of revisit some things that we've discussed in the other meetings that were brought up tonight, just to go over. One was the legacy. How are we going to keep the legacy of these schools if, and this is still an if process, that the board just decides on if we're going to move forward. It will be up to the funding at that point. If we don't receive the funding, then this school isn't going to be built. So this is just one step of this very long process. So if the funding is received, last night we discussed the legacy and the history of these 4 schools and how do we make this one big school for all of these schools to feel home. Could you go over what you discussed last night, Dr. Williams? Sure.
Working with the architects like they have done at Clendenin and some of our other schools. When Clendenin was built, oil and gas was big at one point in time in Clendenin, and that's represented throughout the building. Malden, salt and saline has been in years past important in that community, and the architects would work with the staffs and the communities of the different areas to see how they wanted to showcase their history in a new building.
And we also have discussed, I think maybe in the first or second elementary school meeting, we discussed the soccer field, and because it has been brought up several times about the place that we are looking at to build this school is currently being used as a soccer field for our students to play. And could you discuss on that?
There would be other areas. Midland Trail's property, for example, would be good for a soccer field after a new school was built. If that does come to pass, there are other areas in this part of the county that would be available. Possibly even at the new school. We think there may be property at the new school in addition to having the school, but also having room for soccer fields for the youth soccer league.
The rendering that is currently outside is an example only of what could be. There's a lot that's going to go into factor with over the next 4 years. Student population, special needs, like there's a lot that goes into it. The rendering outside is just an example. Last night we discussed input from the community and how we're going to go about, just like we did Obviously, Hoover and Clendenin was a different circumstance, but those communities, those principals, those teachers, they were all involved from first step on as what they wanted their school to look. So can you discuss what we talked about last night about community and teacher and parent involvement on how we create this school?
Sure, and it would be the same way as when they go out into the communities and see how they want to have their history represented in the new building. It would also be, those would be the discussions that would take place on how the new school should look. Should they do the learning centers or should they have individual classrooms? Probably Mr. Crawford had a good idea last night about visiting two of our most recent schools, one being Edgewood and the other being Clendenin, to get ideas from the way those schools are designed and how that could be worked into a building, a new building.
We have heard a lot about transportation over the last 6 meetings. I understand that Dr. Potter rode the bus several times, and we asked her to have someone from an administrative level be there and to clarify the discrepancies in all of the times and the things that we were hearing. We talked about it last night, but she did ride the routes from Midland Trail as well.
Yes, she did that yesterday.
Midland Trail, since it's here, there will be parts of the community which are probably closer to Cedar Grove than DuPont. Have we considered or looked into or anything of that nature of those students possibly being absorbed by Cedar Grove or no?
I'd like to keep the kids together, but if there is room and a parent would like to transfer their child to Cedar Grove or to any school, if there's room, then that's something that can always be done.
Ms. Creedlong brought up the teacher input. I know that our staff goes around the beginning, the first semester of the year in our high schools and talks to the seniors in each of the high schools to kind of see from a student perspective of what's going on. I know that we have the superintendent's retreat in the springtime, kind of the same thing. We get some feedback from our seniors from a student standpoint. Do we have the same inputs or a committee to where we get teacher input, teacher opinions, teacher at any point throughout the year?
We don't have a committee like we do for the like we do with the high school kids. No, we don't. But LSICs, PTAs, PTOs, those areas would be places where they can express themselves. Of course, they can always call.
First of all, I want to say I'm a parent of 3 individuals with autism, and I thank you for what you do. Not just you, but thank you for what you do each and every day. As a mom of 3 boys with autism, I know change is hard. I too chose to send my children to different schools because of what was best interest for them. One of the things, and kids with autism don't like change, and with sensory issues don't like change. Kids with disabilities don't like change. Kids with anxiety don't like change. Kids in general don't like change, but specifically for children with autism, it could be detrimental to their lifestyle. What I always did for my youngest, because he had a little more difficult time transitioning than my other 2, was in his IEP each year, I would request that he could get his own time at school. Like when he would go from elementary to middle school, he would have his own walkthrough. When he would go to middle school to high school, he would have his own walkthrough. So I am requesting, when this school is built, for our children in these self-contained special ed classrooms to have their own time in these buildings before anybody else is allowed to, so that they can get to know their buildings, so that they can get to know their teachers, they can get to know their space, they can see their sensory room. And not that this isn't important to every single student, but for kids with autism specifically, it could be detrimental to what happens that first day of school. And I think if we do our best to set them up for success, then it will be better. So can I request that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, and I bring this up at every meeting, IEPs and 504s are brought up at every single meeting. Our IEPs and 504s in this county are built on the need If we need 20 self-contained IEP, self-contained resource, MI, autism, if we need 20 of those classrooms in this new school, we will have 20 of those classrooms in this new school. That rendering is just a starting point. Our need in this county is not, we are, first of all, we're legally limited to how many we can put in a classroom, especially in special education. We will, whatever is needed, this school will have. And Dr. Williams and Ms. McCorkle and everyone on Elizabeth Street will make sure that that happens. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. And Ms. Cox, it's my street that your father lived on, and he is missed every single day. He was a great neighbor, and he's missed every single day there. We lost 2 individuals on our street at the same time, and he is missed every single day. These meetings are emotional for all of us. It's not about us, it's about you, but I am thankful that you came tonight. I am thankful that you let your voices be heard. I encourage you to continue to let your voices be heard, whether that's legislatively or here. I hope that you can attend the meetings that will be coming, and you let us know what you want your school to look like so that we can build this to what the needs of this community is. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mrs. Jordan?
I have a lot of questions, but I feel like Mrs. White covered them. I feel like in the past when we've done consolidations, there has not been any staff people at Kanawha County Schools, staff people without a position once consolidated. Is that correct, Dr. Williams?
Usually that's the case. That's also the case during staffing season when we have to cut so many folks. We have retirements every year. We have folks transfer. So I can't guarantee it,
Right.
but in the past, folks have had a job with Kanawha
I know,
County
and
Schools.
that's the last thing, one of the last things we want you to worry about if you're an employee now, if you're gonna be an employee when this school opens. And again, this school will be built on each of your opinions, meeting with the other elementary schools. It doesn't have to be like that one, that's just an idea. So bring your ideas when there are meetings, because they want them. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's been an emotional evening. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. Mrs. White?
Dr. Williams, I know that there were a number of folks who spoke about concerns about student-to-teacher ratio and how many teachers we have per student. Can you talk about that a little bit, what this would look like in the proposed?
Sure. There are student-teacher ratios that we have to follow. But if you take the 600 kids that are predicted for this school when it opens and the 42 and a half teachers, staff members, teachers that are predicted, that would be like a 15 to 1 ratio. However, in that number, you would take out the special ed students and you would take out the special ed teachers just because they have certain ratios that they have to follow. But even doing that, your ratio would still be anywhere from 15, 16 to 1.
And if we had a need for more teachers based on,
Yes.
we would add that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I know a lot of folks spoke about concerns about the autism classrooms, and I guess I appreciate all the questions that Mrs. White asked. I think the one I'd ask is that in terms of designing the space that would, be in the new school, would there be opportunities for teachers that work in those classrooms to give input about what those spaces look like and what their needs are?
Absolutely. When the architects come out, we have a committee and they come out to the schools and talk to the teachers and walk through the schools, discuss ideas, take all of that information and then come back with initial drawings and renderings and then take that back out and then come back, and it's a give and take the whole process.
The largest school in the county, is that the proposal? 600 students will be the largest.
I'm sorry, Mrs. White. Mrs. White still asking questions, ma'am. Sorry.
Some other folks have raised concerns about safety. I guess, what does safety look like in the current schools, and what would it look like in the new school?
The thing that you couldn't see when they were showing Clendenin was, it's called a man trap, for lack of a better term. It's a lockdown facility. You come into one door and you can't get anywhere else until you're buzzed into another door. ID and all of that has to be presented. The new levy that just went into effect will be putting those into all of the schools. And new schools, Clendenin was built with one, Cedar Grove will have one, Edgewood has one. All of that is added. And some folks have talked about windows, maybe too many windows, but if you, and you really couldn't tell on the video, but at Cedar Grove in the cafeteria where they have all of those windows, the first set of windows are frosted so that you can't see in them. It's the upper windows that let the light out. So from the ground, you're not able to see into the window. So things like that can be done to make our schools safer.
And lastly, I have asked the transportation question every time, and I do want to thank the administration, Dr. Potter, and the bus drivers who have taken the time to drive these different routes and new routes to verify that what was in the proposal is met by actual real-life drivers driving the routes. But I want to ask the question again, because I've asked it every time. Do the routes that were driven meet what was in the proposed paperwork for what the times would look like for students?
Within 2 or 3 minutes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's clear that Midland Trail has a lot of teachers and staff that really care about their students. We hear you. I know you don't think we do, but we hear you. We see you. You're here. You're meeting the needs of your kids, and we thank you. And I know that this is very hard, and it is clear that this is a school that is impactful in the lives of your students. And we hear you. I hear you. The thing that I have said at every meeting, and I'll continue to say it, I hope someone listens. The way we are funded does not support community schools. We are funded based on the number of students, and it doesn't factor in the number of low-income students that we have. It doesn't factor in the extent of disabilities that we have in an adequate way, and it doesn't factor in all the trauma and the experiences that kids are having these days. And unfortunately, until those things are addressed, I'm concerned about the funding that we're going to have available to support community schools, and that there are counties across the state that are going through similar things. That doesn't make it any better, but I hope that everyone here will use the passion and the drive that you're showing us tonight to speak to folks in the legislature, to say that, yeah, they support community schools and they want to give the funding that's needed for it. Thank you very much for being here and speaking up for your kids and your community, and I hope you will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Crawford?
Thank you, Mr. Cavender. I'd just like to say this, that I don't know whether most of you understand our budget and how we operate. 85% of our budget is spent on teachers and their insurance and stuff like that. So it's almost impossible for us to continue to operate all of these schools. We just have too many buildings, and we have to trim them down. Like Mrs. White is saying, you need to talk to your legislators about funding. I do appreciate you coming and voicing your opinion. That is the American way. And as long as I'm around, you can come and talk at any time you want to come to the board and say what you would like to say. But the thing about it is, the bottom line is that this board is responsible to keep the budget out of the red. And that's what we intend to do, and provide the best possible education we can for the children of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. And Mrs. White, you say you have one more question?
Ms. Carruthers asked why us? And I feel like we need to answer her question. So I know, I see social media and I see the things it says, and I know a lot of folks say a lot of stuff about Dr. Williams, but it was the board that spoke to him in his review and said, you know, we've lost a lot of teachers last year. We anticipate as long as we continue to lose students, we're going to anticipate to lose teachers. We have to find another way to balance our budget. So we asked him to come up with some ideas, and consolidation was one of them. Can you explain how you chose these schools in particular, or why did we choose these schools?
Well, we look at the CEFP, and in the CEFP, a combined elementary school for the eastern end of the county has been in there for a while now. Also, when you look at the declining numbers and what you can do, for example, East Bank and McKinley, when you can move a school, and that's how we did the consolidations with Grandview, Weimer, and Marmette, when you can move a school and not have to do major renovations, that's the most cost-effective thing to do, and that's how these schools were chosen, based on our CEFP and cost-effectiveness.
Thank you. And all four of the elementary schools, every single night that we've been here, have all said the exact same thing. They talked about their teachers, they talked about the love the teachers have for our kids, they talked about how safe they feel that their students are with our teachers, and I just want to make it clear, those teachers aren't leaving. Those teachers are going to be in this new school, and those same people that are loving your kids now will continue to love them, and as we continue to go on, that's definitely not going to change. We have some amazing staff at Kanawha County, and they will continue to protect and love and nurture your kids just as they do every single day. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. White. To sort of dovetail your question about why this area and that process, I guess let me see if I can form this question correctly. So, I'm from the Sissonville area. When I was growing up, there were 6 elementary schools, I believe, just in the Sissonville catchment area. Now there is 1, correct? So,
2.
Flynn and Sissonville.
Right.
I'm sorry, there are 2. Flynn and Sissonville. There were at least 6 when I was, and that was 30 years ago now, 32 years ago. That's just one example. We've seen several other catchment areas go from 8, 10, 12 elementary schools down to now we may have 2 to 3. In some cases in the larger populated areas, because we are, again, I know this was brought up earlier, but I have said in all these meetings, we are a very diverse county from a population standpoint. Some parts of our county have a higher population than others, so I understand that the higher populated parts of the county are going to have more elementary schools. We are now to a point where after these 2 middle school consolidation votes that we made, we will only have 2 catchment areas in the entire county that have 2 middle schools total for their catchment area, correct? That'd be South Charleston and the capital area.
That's correct.
All the rest of the catchment areas just have 1 middle school feeding into their high school.
That's correct.
I guess what I'm trying to do is paint the picture that we are, and I know it's taken a lot of time to see it, but we are continuing to see the dwindling of our population, and we're going to continue to see the dwindling of the number of schools that we are able to keep open due to, as Mrs. White has pointed out several times, the funding formula that we have no control over, correct?
That's correct.
This is never a conversation we ever want to have. In my day job, I don't look at things as just, as certainly people or students or whatever, as just numbers. I facilitate and host several community meetings in my day job. So of course, that's why I've asked several times, and then Mrs. White, several of us, and Mrs. Jordan pointed out, that we're going to make sure to host several community meetings. If this all goes forward and we get the funding and we realize we are going to be building a new school, then we want to have as much of that input from all of the community as possible, right? Whatever that process looks like.
Yes.
That's very important to me. I know it's important to all of us here. It doesn't make it easier. It doesn't help your pain. It doesn't fix anything, and I understand that. But we do have to face what we are dealt with. And we are the ones here at the local level that have to make these decisions based on the decisions that are happening in the legislature that we don't have control over. And that's what we're elected to do. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard on the communities. It's hard on the students especially. We understand that. But we as a board, I believe, going through this process, and this is our 6th meeting, none of us are going to leave feeling good about this. That's not at all the case. But we do, as Mr. Crawford pointed out, we do have that responsibility. So having said that, I do want to say thank you to each and every person who signed up to speak or yielded their time for another person to speak. As Mrs. White pointed out, we do hear you. We are listening. This is not all for naught. This was not in vain. I probably feels that way, and there's no way I can convince you otherwise, and I understand that. But we do want to say thank you for taking your time out during dinner time and time with your family to be here to express those concerns. So if no one else, does anybody else have any more questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, I will ask Mrs. Lewis to please call the roll.
Mrs. Kate White. Aye. Mr. Cavender.
Aye.
Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mrs. Tracy White.
Aye.
Mrs. Jordan.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. The next meeting date will be Monday, November the 4th at the central office for our special session, our monthly meeting at 4 o'clock. Hearing no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Okay, thank you all.